Welcome to this edition of Trans-European Division News. Today we're with Jimmy and Cedrene Botha, who come from the Scottish Mission and have a story to share with us. Jimmy, tell us the story.
Hey, well, it's an interesting, and it could be a long story, but we will give you the broad strokes. And it is simply this. We've been married for 25 years now, and we still don't have any children. Mm-hmm. And so we have escaped the expectation of so many that we should be a family, a pastoral family with 2.5, 3 children.
A couple of dogs.
So now we have 2 cats. We're a family of 2 parents, 2 cats. Mm. And that is in broad strokes. Our expectations that we had when we were just young married was that we were going to be like that. Mm. You know, like the norm. What is normal? And now we know after so many years that there's something missing for us. And but you didn't know that. You didn't get the memo back then.
Yeah.
You discovered along the way when try. You know, Margaret Wheatley writes in one of her books that we as humans, we tend to think very mechanically about our bodies. And so, for instance, she mentions Christian Barnard, who talks about the heart as a pump. Mm. Or she talks about people who do cosmetic surgery and things like that, you know, trying to mechanically fix what's wrong with our bodies. But it is until that time when we came to that place where we also went to try and mechanically fix this problem, that I realized that normal is probably defined by every person for what it should be. But the thing is, there's still expectations that a pastoral couple should have 2 to 3 children. Otherwise, how can they minister properly in a church full of children?
So immediately I see you referring to your story in the context of pastoral expectation over and above being parents. This is almost like a double challenge.
I think if you're a minister, you cannot escape. Any pastor cannot escape the fact that his own household is part of that setup. You cannot be a minister and the church family is unaware of your family. It's impossible. Mm.
And I know it from a different perspective, from the perspective of being single beyond the accepted age. And I know from friends who have maybe kids with special needs or kids who made different decisions than the ones that the church community would have accepted as norm or normative, what it's like to be on the outside looking in. And so you don't only have your pain, and maybe we can talk about the grieving of a dream, because you do grieve a dream, but you also have this sense of, I do not belong here. How do you handle that?
It's so difficult because you're, as a woman, firstly, and Jimmy can share from his point of view, but from a woman, that is your inbuilt maternal instinct that one day I want to be a mother, or one day I want to have this family. And then suddenly you're faced with the reality that that dream, as you mentioned, is never going to realize. And you are in this battle between the fertile world versus infertility. Yeah. And that infertility can range from actually not being able to have children biologically, or infertility because of circumstances, as you mentioned, age, or just
being, not having a partner or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so you have this isolation. You feel isolated in that nobody actually can understand where you're coming from, because of someone who has a child, or whether they've lost the child or anything like that, they just are unable to understand the irreversible or loss.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if you can't have a child, it's a irreversible loss.
The finality of
yes,
the story.
Yeah.
because if you lose a child, or you know, there's something that happens, you can get closure.
Yeah. So thank you. How do you handle that? Because I have friends who are also single, one of them in particular, and she often says to me, if God told me I will never get married, I could just let go and kind of, you know, but I'm in this question mark. So, and at some point, I guess age itself will be like, okay, this is the cut end, you know, the end of this dream. But how do you find healthy ways to grieve that?
So you mentioning the important word here is grief, and let me underline what what Cedrene was saying just now. So we went along, and like I say, you don't get the memo. You want to be pregnant, and you know, it's not like tomorrow night a light comes on that says, "Hey, everything's okay. There's a baby coming 9 months." There's nothing like that. So what happens is that you go on and on, and you hope that is something happening. Hey, how's it going? and then it's not. And then I did research. I wrote a paper in 2015 on this very topic, and it's there where I read and where it struck me for the first time that if you do not have a child, if you never had any children, and you really wanted a child, then there is a grief, the word that you were using, because everything that we do not have, that we really desperately wanted or needed in our lives, we're grieving for that. I can tell you now, if someone stood on the balcony of this building and their phone fell off because they wanted to take a picture but they dropped it and it cracked down the bottom, there's going to be a tiny bit of grief in that person for that phone.
Yeah, yeah.
All of us grieve something that is missing or not there, that is not normal. And here you have to grieve something. Now I realize after 25 years, I have to grieve the loss of a child or children
That I never.
without a beginning or an end. There's no way to have closure in that sense.
Yeah.
But the
So-
grieving process is different for each person
Yes.
and each couple. And one of the ways that we found in order to help with that grieving process is to play and also to adopt, or, you know, our little children, our cats.
And sometimes we just borrow somebody else's children for a while, you know. Sometimes we have good friends who say, yeah, you look so lonely. Don't you want to borrow our children for one night? And they come and they drop them off and they sleep by us, and then the parents have a night off or something like that. And, you know, those are enjoyable times for us. So, and there's many, many things you can do. But you always know in the back of your mind, you cannot really replace that what is missing.
So here you are in Christian ministry, and you believe that God is with you. How has He helped you on that journey?
For me, it took a while because I always felt guilt and shame. Because it was me that was the problem, I always believed this thing when in the Bible says go prosper and reproduce and everything, and then suddenly I can't do that. So what is wrong with me? Why did God create me different to somebody else? But through reassessing and going again, praying, I don't know how many prayers with God in my own secret way, but also reaching out to people that I could trust to share my journey with, I realized that there's a verse that Jimmy will probably make reference to. In spite of the situation we're in, God has a different purpose for me. And that is something that he revealed to me by various different ways. Some things that people have said to me in person, just little events that have happened that made me feel worthy again. But it can be different for others, but that was how it was for me.
I know you said that, what you just said, and it's come as a, you sort of articulated the story, but that's not easy. That's not an easy reality to accept, is it?
No.
Not easy at all.
Not easy at all.
No.
Jimmy, was it easy for you or
No,
difficult in terms of God?
No, it's not easy, and I'll come back to answer your previous question, but just to respond to this is, I've lost my dad when he was 46, and I still miss him, but it's different, and it's different for us because the beginning was never there, and there was also never an end, and you look at other people and it sometimes comes back to you. So it's a bit different.
I think that's really important. I'm so glad you touched on that, because grief doesn't move like that. At least in my life, in my experience, it moves like that.
Yes.
So sometimes you're fine, and then all of a sudden it comes again, and you cried again, and then and what I find important for me in different areas of life is to allow myself that wave, knowing that it will pass, it will wash over me, and Jesus is with me, Emmanuel is with me through the wave, because it's circular, it's not. And I want to affirm you on the fact that you are sharing a very personal and challenging story, and you are here at EPC, and you did a workshop in which you share your story with others, which means that you are using some of the most difficult part of your life to bless others. So thank you for that. And there'll be people listening to our conversation and thinking, I wish I knew how to speak to people who are going through this without saying something that might actually cause more harm. So what are some of the do's and don'ts when it comes to talking, whether it's to someone who is trying for a pregnancy that doesn't come, or any other thing that makes you be outside of the script, the norm?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me just go back one step.
Sure, of course.
And then answer that question that we promised, and then we go to this one. So there's a verse in Ephesians. Now to him who is
Able
to do immeasurably more than we can ever ask or pray for. Only that bit I've carried with me for a long, long time. I've done my own theological gymnastics with that.
Digging as well, yeah.
And I say gymnastics because it means something for me in this context. Because I say to myself, well, it's like you say, we're in that circle where, and then some people will use that verse to pray for others who don't have let's say for instance a young lady who is hoping to get pregnant, and they will say, well, if you just say this verse, God can do much more than you can even think. But I know this is not going to happen anymore because I'm not Abraham and she's not Sarah.
Not yet.
And so I say, okay, in that case, well then what else can I do? What else can the Lord do for me that is much more than what I can ever imagine? And just a one-sentence story for you, because we're tight on time. I ended up in a university in a class of second year midwifery students, 60 of them, ladies, asking me to come and give a lecture or a talk about how it is from a male perspective when you're in this position. And I thought to myself, how am I going to handle that? And there I was with these 60 ladies. I didn't know anyone from them from anywhere. And it was a wonderful blessing to all of them. And when I walked out of there, for me as well. So what do you say? What do you say if people come to you? What do they say to you? Sometimes people are afraid to say anything because they're afraid they might say something to offend you or hurt your feelings and stuff like that. And I want to say, from my perspective, I think I think people should, just treat you as normal, whatever that normal may be, without constantly thinking there's something wrong with you, because it doesn't help if they are attempting to make you feel better and you realize what they're doing and they're not being authentic. For me, authenticity is visible through how people speak. And I know when people care, and I know most people care. And you know what, sometimes all I need is somebody to be with me in silence or a hug or something like that, and we know we're good, we know we're okay.
Yeah.
Cedrene, for you?
For me, the most common question that I get in events that you go to or when you get to meet new people is, oh, hi, how many kids do you have? There's an automatic assumption.
Yeah.
When they don't, you may not even have your kids around you, you may be in just a intimate or meeting or even at work sometimes. But my suggestion would be, and what I try to do in those situations when I meet somebody is say, so tell me a little bit about you.
It's a much nicer question, right? Because it gives the person room to choose what they want to say.
And you feel, okay.
Yeah.
There's no assumptions.
I like that. Thank you. And so simple. So tell me a bit about yourself. So simple. Yeah.
Now, over the last few years, I know that you've got heavily involved in children's ministry.
Yes. It's been my passion ever since I was a little girl. And it stemmed from my grandmother. She was a teacher. And so when I got married and I met Jimmy, that was the automatic initial thing. We talked about having the family, and I still wanted to work with kids. I wanted to become a teacher. And I became a teacher. But then, when we tried to have our family, it just never happened until we got the diagnosis. And it was tough because every time I walked into a classroom, whenever I was in a children's Sabbath school, whenever I held a baby in a baby dedication or met new families at church, there is always a deep down sense of yearning. I wish it was me. But for me, the love that God instilled within me for children somehow just kept me going, because I started to love them as if they were my own. And that's why I still want to work with children. I still love children. And we still have our own godchildren, friends of ours that have kindly entrusted their children to us, and it's...
And so the Holy Spirit uses you to connect with all sorts of different children and gives you the creativity to try and connect with them in imaginative ways. I've seen some of the things you do. What's the name of your...
Professor
Noodle Brain.
Professor Noodle Brain. If that doesn't capture the imagination and attention of children, what does? So there's a gift there.
Yes.
And God is using you.
And we love it.
We love it.
Yeah.
Why not? Why sit in a corner and feel sorry for yourself all the time? It happens sometimes, like you say, the circle goes and something comes. And when it does, you recognize it and you deal with it in your own way. This time may be different from next time. And like she says, we play. We keep ourselves busy. And the play can be unpacked in a big way. There's lots of things one can do and so on. We try not to pretend that this has never happened with us.
But I just want to go back to something. When you said about a ministry, baby dedications, whatever, and you shared feelings, but you had to obviously internalize those things.
Yeah.
That could not have been easy in any way, shape or form.
No.
Putting on the mask. That must have been... tremendously challenging at times.
And it still sometimes is. Those feelings don't ever go away. But you tend to, with experience, and as you slowly start to come to a point in your life, you start to let go of certain things. And for me, I've started to let go of, we were talking about comparisons with somebody else earlier. I start to let go of the comparison between myself and other women who have children, or other women who, have better skills or whatever that may be that I feel they have.
Yeah.
And to realize that God has a different...
You have your own voice and your own talent and your own story.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We do need to wrap up, but I wonder, there'll be someone watching who just discovered that they are in the same journey. And it's not a journey anyone would choose. So what would you say to someone who just discovered this? What kind of droplet of hope or light or guidance could you give?
It's not your fault.
Oh, that's good.
It's not your fault, no.
Because sometimes we try to justify and explain and we actually make things worse. It's not your fault.
It's not your fault.
And shame is a very strong, powerful thing.
Yeah.
It's not your fault.
Thank you so much. You've been so brave, so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing, and may Jesus continue to use you in your ministry, not just in Scotland, but all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you.